Hello, and I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. So, for the class of February 21st, 2023, I'm going to record this lecture, and we'll use the whiteboard as well in place of a live whiteboard. Okay, so today on the agenda is Wen Dan Tang, which we actually talked about previously. Xiong Tang, which is a small but awesome formula, and a few herbs to talk about as well. Juru, Zhishi, Zhike, Tianma, Dahuang, and Fuling Zhibanxia. We've already gone over these before in class, but we can talk about them specifically today. Okay, so I'm going to share my whiteboard on my second notebook or my iPad here. So let's do that. Okay. So the first formula we have is Wen Dan Tang. Let's see if this works. The word wen is to warm, like wen bing, wen. Dan is gallbladder. Tang, of course, is a decoction or some such thing like that. All right, so the herbs that we're looking at here, let me change to a different color. All right, so Ansha, Chun Pi. Often the text will say Zhu Hong, and we talked about that last time. There's Zhu Bai and Zhu Hong, which is the pith and the zest, but Chun Pi is both together. So we'll just talk about it as Chun Pi. And Fuling. Oops. There we go. Gansao. Okay. There's our famous Archen Tong formula, right? And then on top of that, Juru, Zhishi, and then we can also include Shengjiang and Dazao. Oops, where'd my screen go? There we go. Shengjiang and Dazao. Put those somewhat aside. The formula is fairly straightforward. That's Archen Tang plus some extras. So obviously we have a major phlegm component to the presentation. The key here is to understand the formula, of course, as a Wen Dan Tang and not Archen Tang are the side herbs, these modifications. So Juru is this character, which is bamboo. So it's Zhu means bamboo. So Juru, this is a part of the bamboo. And then Zhishi is a fruit, right? We have Zhike and Zhishi. Both of them can be used. They are different in the textbooks, but they are somewhat interchangeable. And I remember we went over this before as well. Then Shengjiang and Dazao round off the formula. Okay, so the purpose of the formula is to, in addition to transforming phlegm, is to move qi. And we see that with Chunpi, we see that with Zhishi, even Bansha as well. All of these help to move qi. And then also regulate and harmonize the stomach and the gallbladder as well. So the formula is called Warm the Gallbladder, and there's actually quite a bit of discussion about why it is in fact called Warm the Gallbladder when some of the key herbs like juru are not warm at all. And there's hundreds and hundreds of years of discussion about this. And one explanation was that by clearing out the pathological phlegm and fire, that the true warmth, the true fire, can then flow unimpededly, and so the gallbladder then becomes warm naturally, not because you're using yang tonics or so forth and such like that. The presentation that you might find is what's called in Chinese the gallbladder and stomach, the disharmony of the gallbladder and stomach, which technically just means upset stomach, things like nausea, even acid reflux, hiccuping, all those, this rebellious stomach qi can be in the category of stomach not in harmony. So we have some sort of discomfort in the stomach. Phlegm, kind of turbid phlegm, that's any kind of turbid phlegm symptoms, I should say. Insomnia is a very big presentation for this formula. So this is often and commonly used for insomnia, and especially if there's some sort of a vexation, what's called a deficiency vexation with insomnia. So an inability to rest or find comfort when sleeping. And then also an important part of this is chest fullness or stifling of the chest, along with phlegm. This phlegm can be phlegm that is being coughed up or felt or experienced in the head or chest, but also it could be what's this so-called invisible or intangible phlegm, which this mystically intangible, invisible phlegm that a lot of Chinese medical writings talk about. So nausea, vomiting, hiccuping, those are all part of the presentation, as I mentioned. And then kind of frights, being on edge, not being able to settle down, kind of being startled easily. This also is a Wen Dan Tang, fits under Wen Dan Tang. And then bitter taste in the mouth, greasy tongue coating, and then the pulse wiry and slippery. So those, that set of symptoms, it doesn't have to be every single one that gives you permission to use this formula. Actually, any one of these, if you find any one of these symptoms, you can try this formula. And in fact, some people will use this formula for people with other symptoms as their main symptoms, but if some of these indications appear in the patient's presentation, they might, through their own experience or decision-making tree, decide to try this formula. The formula isn't overly warm or cold. There's no dominance of one to the other. There are both warm and cold herbs, and you can see that with, for example, Chunpi, Bansha tends to be can be on the warmer side. Anyway, it's not a super strong temperature heavy one way or the other formula. So that's also part of the decision. If something is in a patient, you want to use this formula, and there's something too cold or too hot, of course you can make adjustments, right? So the biggest problem is that you have this phlegm that's stuck in the body, whatever problem it is, and you need to move it out. So if you want to move out phlegm, you can't do it just with cold herbs. You need something warm anyway. All right. So the bancha is able to scorch the dampness and transform phlegm, calm the stomach, stop the nausea. Right. Bancha is a main herb for that. Champi also moves qi, transforms phlegm. Footing moves out dampness, strengthens the spleen. Zhishir moves qi, also transforms phlegm. Juru is cool, it clears heat and also transforms phlegm. It calms the stomach and removes this vexation. So all of the main herbs in here all have something to do with dampness, nausea, and phlegm. So they all work super well together. So the key symptoms to note about the formula would be the deficiency, vexation with insomnia, or insomnia with deficiency, vexation, I should say. Chest stifling, where there's phlegm. The startled, easily startled condition. And then if you want to add the tongue and pulse to it, the tongue would be greasy coating with a bitter taste in the mouth, and the pulse would be wiry and slippery. Okay. So lots of ways that you can alter the formula one way or the other. You can use this formula for all kinds of psychological issues, in addition to what we mentioned, just in a modern way of looking. This formula is commonly used in a lot of psychological symptoms, psychosomatic, but not just psychosomatic, also, so-called real symptoms like schizophrenia, for example, or seizures, all kinds of stuff, from very emotional based to brain chemistry based, if you want to call it that, because of the phlegm. So wind issues, vertigo, and dizziness, rocking, spinning, that this formula also is good for that. We saw last time the Bancha Baju Tenma Tang, which is very similar formula, Archen Tang based plus Tianman Baiju. So they're very much related formulas, and you can treat them as such. You can even combine those Juru, Zhishir, Tianma, Baiju if you feel necessary. Because it's also good for the stomach. People have used this for gastritis or gallbladder inflammations, gallstones, coughing, wheezing, even thyroid issues. The range is really wide. I think even hardening of the arteries, arteriosclerosis. It's a formula that, if you get to know it and use it well, and you have appropriate modifications, you can accomplish quite a lot with this formula. And so, because a lot of these psychoneurological issues like cognition and mental clarity, things like that, the problem of not, when you have a muddled consciousness or some sort of foggy headedness, this is often considered to be dampness or phlegm misting or unveiling the heart, right? That's what kind of moves into that so-called invisible phlegm realm. And so this formula, if everything is lined up correctly, this formula is appropriate for that. And again, all kinds of additions. You can add herbs like gualo, beimu, which helps move the phlegm even better. You can add, I don't know, sanzaren if for insomnia. You can do as you need to. We're using this as the base formula. Okay, so I think that covers it. I think it's the formula is actually fairly simple to understand, and and it's wide ranging. It's very hard to hurt somebody with this formula. So if you're not sure if you want to use this formula or if it's appropriate, it's kind of no problem to just try it anyway, and see if things get better. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it does have the status of being one of these, top tier formulas. It's very compact, very well constructed, and does the job. Okay. Okay, so with that, we can talk about juru. So that's this formula, this herb here. Let me clear the board here. I think I spelled that with the wrong ju. I think it's ZHU, not JU. Juru is, as I mentioned, it's a part of the bamboo, and it's sweet, first of all. So because it's sweet, it nourishes, sweet and cold, or I should say sweet and cool. It says, the text says slightly cold, which is another way to say cool. Sweet and cool together tends to nourish yin, and that's one of the benefits of this formula. It clears heat. It transforms phlegm. It helps eliminate vexation, and it also stops nausea. So everything that we need in the Wen Dan Tang indications, all the formula indications, we have it right here in this one herb. This juru homes into the heart. I'm sorry, not the heart, the lungs and the stomach channel. Okay, so that's the target of this particular formula. So you have Archen Tang, which is general for phlegm, and then juru takes it to where it needs to go, and specifically helps us guide it into the lung and the stomach for gastritis, for example, into upset stomach. Even ulcers actually can be used. This formula can be used for that. And then lungs store phlegm, right? Spleen generates phlegm. The lungs store it. So help getting into the lungs, moving out phlegm. Then the phlegm throughout the rest of the body can also, wherever it might be, the problem area we should also resolve as well. So juru, as just the single herb juru, is used for damp heat that causes coughing, heart fixation, and insomnia. Okay, so perfect. That's what we need. It's sweet and cool, So that's makes it particularly good for clearing out the damp heat. And then once that happens, then the lungs will stop coughing, and also because the phlegm and the heat are gone, then the spirit in the heart can rise and can manifest and be calm, and so that kind of vexation goes away as well. And then you can sleep good, right? So this is very very straightforward, very simple as that, and that's just Juru by itself, just Juru. But that's why it works so well. That's why this formula works so well in this context. I think that's the main point of this. There are a lot of herb combinations with Juru. You see it here with Wen Dan Tang. All of these herbs are considered paired herbs or combination herbs with Juru. You can, if you have this turbid damp heat or damp phlegm heat in the lungs, and you need some help, herbs like gualo or sangbai pi can always be added. If it's in the stomach heat area with nausea, Juru again is one of the set of anti-nausea herbs, and we can increase that benefit by adding a little bit of huangqin or huangnian to pair with Juru banxia, and that's where Wen Dan Tang is. But Wen Dan Tang, you can add huangnian or you could add huangqin to it, and that, in my experience, works even better. Huangnian with a very very small dose, 1 grams, 2 grams, 3 grams, whatever you consider a small dose, but really not more than 3 to 6 grams of huangnian. And that if there's stomach heat especially, that makes quite a difference. Sometimes the Wen Dan Tang with huangnian is marketed as huangnian Wen Dan Tang or huangqin Wen Dan Tang, but actually in the classics there's a lot of versions of Wen Dan Tang, and over the years different versions, and one of the versions is Wen Dan Tang with huangqin or with huangnian, and it's just called Wen Dan Tang too. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Just so you know that about the names. There's another formula called Jupi Juru Tang. Jupi again is the Chenpi. So that's a great formula. That's a Shanghan Jingui formula. That's also good for stomach heat, deficiency heat in the stomach with nausea. And that includes herbs like Chenpi, Shengjiang, and then Renshen, because it's a deficiency. So you can look up Jupi Juru Tang if you're interested in that formula. Also a good formula to know. Another lesser known function of this herb is to cool blood and stop bleeding. And so it has ability to stop if somebody is vomiting up blood or has epistasis, the blood from the nose, even menorrhagia. This Juru also has some noted function for that as well. Okay, so it's a great herb. It doesn't taste bad. It's sweet after all, and it's not really heavy. It's not thickly sweet. So it doesn't really cause that cloying issue or any kind of discomfort. Some people don't like sweet, but this herb is not really offensive in any way. So there you go. That's Juru. Okay, next is zhishi. That's the zhishi is a fruit. Shi means a fruit. And this herb we'll talk about together with zhike. And there are some noted differences, although personally, I tend to not hold those differences too strongly in the clinic, but the differences are notable and they should be noted. So Zhishi is it basically is for breaking qi and expelling this glomus or pi, the nodule below the heart. It also is able to transform phlegm, and it can get rid of accumulations. It is bitter and spicy or acrid, slightly cold or cool. So again, this is so bitter, acrid, and cool. The home organ systems are the spleen, stomach, and large intestine. Okay, so when the way it's understood is in the classics is that when the qi moves, then the phlegm can move, and then the wheezing, if that's an indication, the wheezing will stop, and then you can also dissipate this abdominal distension. Another condition of this herb is pain, like a stabbing pain with breathing. So that also can be helped and alleviated with this. It's able to get rid of all types of food accumulations. So that's kind of like food stagnation. Phlegm, nodules of some sort. This is hard to translate in Chinese, but zhengjie, so some nodules. It's a classic, one of many classic words for nodules. Can be malignant or benign. Nausea, coughing, edema, and distension, especially in the ribs and chest. It's also used for hemorrhoids or intestinal, like rectal bleeding or rectal inflammations, diarrhea. Did I say that? Dysuria. It's got a lot of functions, especially along the entire GI tract, the fu organs, right? It's able to increase appetite, strengthen the spleen, and so forth. So it's got a lot of GI benefits. Zhishi compared to zhike, the differences noted there's a few in your textbooks. You should see them. But one of them is that zhishi is very harsh. It's very strong and very harsh, whereas zhike is a little bit more mild and calmer. So that's one noted difference. Also, zhishi is helps a little bit more in the chest and diaphragm, where zhike is relatively speaking more about the this intestines and stomach. Okay, so even though we saw zhishi explained as helping distension in the abdomen, when or like food stagnation and so forth, which can be in this diaphragmatic region, right? But when compared with zhishi is a little bit higher. Zhike is more this just below the diaphragm, one way to say it. But zhishi also is in the textbooks, I think, is also noted for working more on the lower part of the body, where zhike more on the upper part of the body. So some of these things you have to play with them clinically and find out how it works for you. For me, often, like I said, If I have a reason for using one or the other, I will. If one happens to be out of stock in the clinic, I don't have too much problem just asking for the other to be used instead, at least temporarily. It is the differences are not that strong. Maybe other practitioners have another opinion. Some people like one or the other because the taste is more palatable, right? Less harsh. And I think jerke, if I remember, jerke is a little bit easier to take, just taste wise. But again, this is very personal opinions and experience. So, okay, and a lot of people have talked about these herbs over the years. Zhishi appears in the Chengqi family. It appears, with Da Huang, for example. You see it in Da Chaihu Tang. You see it in the Da Chengqi Tang and Xiao Chengqi Tang. So all of those are to help break qi and help and allow things to move downward. So if the stools are not moving, and it's not a blood issue, it's a qi issue for whatever the cause is. Zhishi is there to kind of help break that stagnation up and bring things down. So you see some of the applications of Zhishi. Here in Wen Dan Tang, we have the stagnation, the congestion in the chest. So it's being used to get rid of the congestion in the lungs and the chest and so forth, and allow the heart to calm and be more clear. So the Zhishi has that function in this particular in the form we're talking about. Okay, all right. That's Zhishi and Zhike. You also see Zhishi, by the way, in Chaihu Shugan Tang, or Sini-san, and let's see. I think in Tiantai Uyao-san, which is more for the lower inguinal area. Chaihu Shugan Tang, for the hypochondria. Also, you can use it for the inguinal area. So Zhishi just tends to play a role in a bunch of formulas for liver gallbladder area problems as well. So in those formulas, you see Zhishi. And so that also gives you a clue as to how it's used in not just a small stated function in the textbook, but in its applications, it has quite a broad uses. Okay, I think that covers it. Always consult your textbooks for the more details and so forth. Okay, so now we are at xiao xian tang, and that is a kind of a cool formula. It's just 3 herbs. It's a Shanghan Zabing Lun formula, not used a lot. I'm sure some people use it a lot, some practitioners, but you don't see it prescribed that much. But these 3, 4, 5 herb formulas are always awesome if you know how and when to use them, and also by understanding them, you can put them as components in other formulas as well, or see them in other formulas and understand why they're there. So, for example, the Wen Dan Tang, we already saw the Banxia and Huangnian, if you add Huangnian, of course, as a pair. So you can see how these in different ways are paired here and there for specific functions. And then as you get to see each of those, how the herbs work together or individually in one context, then you get a better understanding how it works in other contexts as well. So back to my board here. So this is let's move Wen Dan Tang away. Goodbye. And back to xiao xiong tang. This is the name actually is worth noting because what it does is, the description of what it does is the name itself. So the xiao, we see xiao in many places, right? Xiao cheng qi tang, xiao qing nong tang, xiao jian zhong tang. So xiao just means small or lesser or minor. Xian is to sink into a hole or sink into a trap, to somehow sink down. Usually, xian is not sinking in a good way. Not like in Taiji or Qigong, you want to sink or settle down into your root. Usually, words like chun have that meaning. Xian is to like fall into a trap, to sink in a way that you don't want to. Typically, xiong is the chest. Okay, so this is like most of the Shang'anun, it's all about what happens when the external pathogen is not treated in time or is mistreated, wrongly treated. So the xiao xiong tang, again, like all other formulas, are based on that presumption. I shouldn't say all the formulas, but most of them are based in that, with that presumption. In modern times, we don't worry about that as much. But okay, so here we have the 3 herbs: huangnian, bansha, and the gualo shi. We see here zhi, also gualo shi, the same shi. The shi means fruit. It also it's the shi from shu and shi, right? Deficiency in repletion or deficiency in excess or whatever. It's the same shi. It also means to fill up your belly or to substantiate. It's a cool word. So anyway, the gualo shi is the fruit of the gualo fruit. Okay, 3 herbs, as I mentioned, very nice and compact. Of course, huangnian is cold, and that's kind of the main herb here by dosage. Huangnian and bansha both are quite big, but I think huangnian actually may be a little bit more, a little bit higher up on the rank of dosaging, especially because it is so bitter and very strong. So it fundamentally is a formula where you clear heat. And the bansha and gualo both eliminate phlegm. So we're going to clear heat and scour away phlegm, or wash away phlegm. And in doing so, we open up the chest, open up the constraints and the binds, and allow the chest to open up as well. So quan xiong is kind of expand the chest in a certain way. Quan, open the chest, what we would say in English. So the Wen Dan Tang does this also. This particular formula has slightly, a little bit more specific area of where it's working, which is different than Wen Dan Tang, which also is in the chest, but tends to be a more broadly used formula. Xiao xiong tang is in this area right below the heart, in the chest, in this kind of epigastric, above the diaphragm area, above, I think more above than below, but in this area here. And so the chest stifling glomus, very similar to Wen Dan Tang, but again, not as broadly used. And this one has a repletion type of condition, so when you press in on it, it hurts. Wen Dan Tang was deficient, Remember, deficiency, vexation, and so forth. This formula has a excess, and how do you know that? When you press in, the patient says "ow." Okay, so that's it. Coughing and phlegm are yellow and viscous, so that would imply some ongoing heat, and the turbidity or the viscousness of the phlegm means that heat is cooking it a bit, and it's a little bit harder to expectorate. And so there's maybe some yin deficiency even, but mostly it's just kind of thick phlegm that's being coughed up. The tongue, that's it actually. Just to go back to that, very very small area of indications. There's phlegm. I'm sorry. The tongue coating is yellow and greasy. That's not surprising. And the pulse would be slippery and rapid. So that would be the slippery is, of course, the dampness and the phlegm. Rapid is the heat. Another pulse that you might see is floating and slippery. Floating would mean probably this upper chest area above the diaphragm, so upper jiao, as opposed to middle and lower jiao. So this is in the Shanghanun, the context is that somebody had an exterior symptom, it didn't resolve, it was mistreated, which caused the heat, the pathogenic cold, which is transformed into heat, to sink internally, and then bind in this area with phlegm and heat. So that's the main story here. The text talks about gualo shi being the head, the sovereign herb. The gualo ren, gualo shi, chuen gualo. These are all gualo names for gualo, right? We have gualo ren tends to be the seed within the fruit. So there's like two words that in Chinese actually mean the same thing. Ren and shi mean the fruiting of something or the seed of something. So we have the chuen gualo. The chuen means whole, which is kind of what we're talking about here. Also called gualo shi, the gualo fruit, includes the whole fruit plus the seed. The seed has some intestinal moistening qualities, which can cause looser stools or diarrhea in some people, not everybody, but it can do that. So be careful about which part of the gualo you're using, because that's has slightly different functions, and effects or side effects depending on what you're trying to achieve. So gualo shi here is I think you can use the whole gualo, chuen gualo. It's a really useful herb to know. It clears heat and transforms phlegm and opens the chest. So that's the main purpose of the formula, and that's the herb that is considered to be the sovereign. All right, and it just gets rid of the bi, right? The stuckness. Okay, so Huang Nian is the minister. I think Huang Nian is pretty easy to know. It clears heat, reduces fire. It helps get rid of the stuck glomus or nodule below the heart, which is xin xia pi. So that's considered to be, in modern day, just the stomach, but it's also part of the heart system. So heat from the stomach, yaming heat or heart heat, it can be kind of either confused or interchanged or understood in the same way in this area sometimes, right? So Huangnian is both the heart and the stomach herb to clearing out heat in those two organs. And so it can be a little bit confusing or all over the place in the text about which particular organ it's supposed to be for. You see it also for the liver, right? Huangnian. So in this case, it's this heart stomach area. And then Banxia, we're going to use that to descend and get to dissipate this this glomus or the distension, and get rid of all the constraints or binds, knotting below the heart. Okay, so this is Banxia and Huangnian are commonly seen together. They can be a pair. You see it in Banxia Xie Tang, for example. Many of the Xie Tangs. It's a bitter and an acrid together, which both opens and descends. Okay, so that and then using that with gualo. Gualo is moistening. It has, the seeds have natural oils, and so not only does it clear heat and get rid of phlegm, but it's not too drying. So that becomes important. Okay, and we have the cold, which is Huangnian, and gualo, which is a bit on the warmer side. That matches very well. Okay. So the key points to know about this formula are the sense of oppression or heaviness in the chest, heart and chest region, difficulty breathing because of that, yellow viscous phlegm that's difficult to expectorate, and then a pulse that's floating, slippery, and somewhat rapid. Okay. You can combine this formula with xiao chai hu tang, and you can use it by just adding guado. Really, you can add this to Wen Dan Tang, right? You have like the extra function. You can use this formula in combination with any other formula that fits to getting rid of this, opening up the chest and helping it move through. I used for a lot of conditions in the modern day clinic. Bronchitis, inflammations in the lung, bronchitis, pneumonia, pleurisy, gastritis, gastric acid, gallbladder issues, heart pain, which in this case includes potential heart attacks, not necessarily emergency treatment, but maybe something that is close to it or is getting close to it. It feels close to it or is actually approaching a heart attack. Somebody complains of angina. This formula can be. It's not, obviously I have to say if it's an emergency, you go to the ER. But I'm not. This isn't. There are other formulas that are made for emergencies of the heart, but so I'm not. So this isn't one of those. But if somebody does have this complaint of angina, and it's not an emergency, or especially if they are getting treatment and checked other places, so you don't have to worry about missing some emergency. In any case, this formula can work for that. There's cases where it's used for pancreatitis. I don't know, all kinds of stuff in this area. So as long as the symptoms are in the right area, the indications like the breathing difficulties, the phlegm, the yellow viscous phlegm, and so forth, regardless of the Western diagnosis, this formula can be used in a very broad way. Okay, so with that, let's move on to some other herbs that we're talking about today. Let's see. I think that's Tenma, Da Huang. All right, we'll talk about those. Tenma. Oh, we talked about Tenma last week, so we don't need to talk about it much this time. Yep, I think we covered it already. But just to review, Tenma is sweet and neutral, and strictly homes in on the liver channel. So it's a wind herb. It stops wind, stops seizures, spasms, tremors, that types of thing. Calms the liver, calms and suppresses liver yang, eliminates wind, and opens the collaterals, opens the small channels. So I just briefly review. It's good for all kinds of tremors, spasms, dizziness, vertigo. It used a lot for that. We saw that again in the formula last week. The Bancha Baiju Tenma Tang. And I don't know, since we covered this already. Oh, it also is important to note that it is considered to be a strengthening, like a tonic type of herb. So taken over time, it's able to increase your strength, to fill out your body. So if you're kind of weak and maybe emaciated, or just don't have that muscle mass, excuse me, this herb is kind of a strengthening one. It's able to lighten the body, so you don't feel heavy, kind of sluggish, so your body can feel light and nimble, and it can increase your years. So why not take this herb every day? I don't know. It's an expensive herb. It's very expensive. It's actually not an herb that is used commonly as a anti-aging or long life herb. Now, mostly it's used for the this wind phlegm type of thing. But it's also good to know that you can take it for a long time and it has a health quality, a health benefit to it, as opposed to some sort of side effects that might creep in after taking it for a while. So there's no danger, no need to worry about taking this herb. Okay, you can add it to formulas, or you can take it. I actually haven't prepared it this way, but I think you can also, just a gram or two, take it as a raw herb, ground up, and then mixed in some warm water or something like that. That's also totally fine. So that's Tenma for you. And I think that covers that. And we have Da Huang. Okay, Da Huang is a very important herb. It's bitter, it's cold, and therefore bitter and cold, it has effect. So you don't want to use this herb lightly. You don't want to take this herb lightly. You can use it lightly, or you can use it heavily based on your experience, based on how you prepare it. And of course, even, that in addition to how the patient presents, you can use it at a variety of doses. But this is mainly an herb that is gong xia, to attack and purge, it makes the bowels come out. So it's a purging, bowel purging herb. So just have to be careful with that. When it's appropriate, it's an awesome herb. I'm going to get rid of the screen share because I don't think we need it right now. It's an awesome herb when you know how to use it. You need to have some predictability, or else if you're all over the place with how you dose it and how you prepare it, It's hard to know what to do, with each individual patient. So do be mindful of that. Okay. It has a bit of a blood moving, uh, expelling stasis quality to it, so that makes the herb uh, quite attractive for not just purging the bowels, but also getting rid of stasis, right? Um, which in sometimes can have a very important clinical effect. Um, it's a spleen, stomach, intestinal, liver herb. It can clear liver heat. It gets rid of toxins. It's kind of a detox herb. So um, it has a wide ranging use, but in most cases, the main indication for when you can use this herb is constipation. If there's no constipation, then you might want to pick a different herb, unless for some reason you have experience and some rationale on why you want to use this herb when there's no constipation. An example would be if, for example, in the Da Cheng Qi Tang world, if somebody has a very bad intestinal infection or inflammation, or infection, I should say, and the patient is just multiple bowel movements a day, fever, a heat type, very hot type of bowel movements, right? Odorous, numerous, a lot of pain, and there's some sort of toxin that's still in the body, in the intestinal system. Then you can use a Da Huang formula like Da Cheng Qi Tang to, even though there's diarrhea, use it for a short, calculated amount of time to push out this, increase the diarrhea to push out the toxin, and then you stop, and then the body will recover once it's being pushed out. So that clinically, that's a very scary move to do, right? Because unless you have experience doing it and you're sure about the symptoms, you're sure about your herbs, it's kind of goes counterintuitive to what you want to do, and the patients also freak out. But if, like I said, if you're really sure and you're confident, then it can be a very powerful treatment. Okay. Sometimes, I think we mentioned last week, is a lot of times people get diarrhea, then they take Imodium, something like that, right? And then it just blocks everything. The stools stop, but the problem is still there, built up kind of behind that. And so sometimes you have to purge again to open up that blockage, so that everything can kind of come out. There's a lot to this herb. You see this in combination with Hopo Zhishi in the Chengqi Tang family. You see it in Da Huang Mu Dan Pi Tang, which typically, or the explanation of Da Huang Mu Dan Pi Tang is kind of for appendicitis type of things. You even use it. It's used in the Shanghanun with Fuzi, which is kind of cool, because you have hot and a cold, very hot and a very cold herb together, and that plays out in interesting ways. Or even with Fuzi and Ganjiang, right? So if you have like a cold, you have constipation, and there's some heat, but there's also cold, then you can use these together. And they actually kind of help control each other. The side effects that each of these herbs have, they're kind of mutually controlled, but also mutually enhanced. So it can be kind of cool. That's a Shanghan trick that you can see that the Da Huang Fuzi Xie Tang in the Shanghanun. Okay. It can be used in trauma medicine, externally, internally. Fu Yuan Huo Shui Tang, Fu Yuan Huo Shui Tang, FUWYAN, XUE. XUO Huo and Shui XUE Tang. It's a trauma. It's a formula that's kind of designed for falling or some sort of getting, tripping or falling or being hit, some sort of external trauma, especially in this intercostal area. And that formula has traditionally, in addition to Da Huang and Tao Ren and Hong Hua, it also has the pangolin scales, which aren't available anymore. But still, even without that, you can substitute something else maybe. But the idea of the Da Huang is to bring the blood stasis down and out. And of course, if the patient already has loose stools, you don't have to have the Da Huang in there. Okay, I think it's in Ba Zheng San as well. Ba Zheng San, kind of an herb to get rid of dampede in the lower burner. It's used with Da Huang, Chechen, Zhi, and so forth. So Ba, B-A, Zheng, Z-H-E-N-G, Ba Zheng San. You can look at it there. That's very similar to Long Dan Sheikan Tang, but Long Dan Sheikan Tang doesn't have any bowel purgers, but Ba Zheng San has the Da Huang. So something to note, right? If you decide you want to give one or the other, just note that Ba Zheng San will cause some purging. Okay. What else about Da Huang? I think that's good. It's very antimicrobial. It's blood moving. So intestinal infections, liver infections, GI tracts infections, and inflammations can all benefit from Da Huang. Again, with the appropriate indications and the appropriate dosaging. This is very, very important to get the dosaging of this right. This one, start small, don't start big, unless you really know what you're doing and you're confident that going big is the thing to do. So small doses, you can change the doses over time. Okay. Now, moving along. After Da Huang, we have Fuling and Banxia. So we've talked about Banxia already. Banxia is in Archen Tang. It's in Wen Dan Tang. It's in Banxia Xixin Tang. It's the star herb of Banxia Xixin Tang. So very a huge herb in the Shanghan system, and remains a huge herb throughout the Chinese herbal world. It's just commonly used, very effective herb for a wide variety of things. It's acrid, it's warm, and it has some toxicity. So the thing about that is that the banxia we have is not raw banxia. We don't have it just dried. It is always prepared somehow before it gets to the clinic. The raw banxia is, just, you have to be careful handling it, and it can be toxic. It is actually quite effective clinically, again, for using toxins to get rid of toxins. It can be really effective, but only when you know what you're doing and when you're trained. Then you can use it. But it's, as far as I know, it's not available in Taiwan too, and I'm sure in mainland China. I'm sure you can get it if you have the right sources, but it's not available because of that toxicity. So we have are herbs that are prepared. So usually with ginger, there's the fa banxia, which is, I think it's prepared with yeast. I think like shenxu. I think it's a yeast prepared one, but they're all at least boiled to some degree, banxia, to get rid of the toxicity. Okay, so it's because of that toxicity, it has a bit of cautions and a little bit of scariness in the tradition about it. But if your source is good, there's should be no problem. It's used typically for phlegm or dampness and phlegm, and specifically cold dampness. Right? I'm sorry, cold phlegm. It's not. People do use it for hot phlegm, but that would be more about guaoshi or tianhuafen, or there's a lot of herbs that are for hot phlegm, right? This is for cold phlegm specifically. And of course, like we know about it in Archen Tang, and I don't have to talk about that formula. We've already looked at Banxia Baiju Tenma Tang and Wen Dan Tang. All of those are based on phlegm. And the Banxia Shexing Tang is specifically to help with this glomus, this stagnation below the heart, right, in this epigastric area. So Banxia also has that function of descending and opening up or dissipating that blockage. And because it works in that area, it's also one of the top herbs for nausea. So stomach qi that's rebelling, going against the flow, causing nausea and vomiting. Banxia is one of the top herbs in the Chinese pharmacopoeia. We also saw juru. So Banxia and juru together, very strong, and that's Wen Dan Tang. We have that, the juru and the Banxia work together for the stomach upset. Okay, we also see it in the Shaoshen Tang as well, right? Also, Banxia Hopo Tang for plum pit qi, right? So he kind of brings the qi down in this whole chest region. Okay. Dosaging, I think typically nowadays, or textbook-wise, 3 to 10 grams. But you can go much higher without any danger. Again, as long as you know how to do it and you're confident that you have the right diagnosis. I think the ginger prepared banxia is a little bit better at the stopping the nausea. That's also a function of ginger itself. And the F-A banxia, which I think we have in the clinic. We have both versions at least in the raw. I think maybe granules too. I'm not sure. The banxia is a little bit more about getting rid of dampness, scorching dampness, and I think it's not as scorching, not as hot. Okay. Okay, I think that covers the banxia. You already are super familiar with that. So just remember that it, nausea, phlegm, and don't worry as much as you're told. It's also a formula that's used for morning sickness. So even though it moves downwards, it's considered like slippery. It moves downwards, so there's like, how could you use it for morning sickness? How, a pregnant woman, but it is, and it's a commonly used formula, or banxia in general is. So again, there's lots and lots of discussion about the safety of this herb and why you should be worried or why you shouldn't be worried. Lots and lots of material about that. Okay. And I think last we should talk about Fuling, and I'm sure you're very familiar with these herbs. This Fuling is kind of temperature neutral. It's a little bit sweet, um, and bland. It's and neutral. It, it it's a heart, spleen, kidney connector. So it's used for this. It is a spleen herb. It has some ability to strengthen the spleen, but it also calms the shun. So we have a spleen heart connection, and it's a diuretic. So there's the kidney, right? So it helps connect all of those organs, whatever might be out of place. Fuling can be part of that because it strengthens the spleen. By that alone, it can help move out dampness, but it also is a diuretic, so it strengthens the spleen. The spleen can do its job better, and the herb itself also helps remove fluid. So it is a fluid remover. It helps move, gets rid of edema, all kinds of edema, anywhere in the body. It just helps it move through. So if you have not just edema, but if you have some sort of urinary blockage or urine flow is not so good for whatever reason, Fuling is also used, right? We have Wuling San, which is combined with, where you have Fuling combined with Juling, Baiju, Zixie, and Rou Gui, so to provide some heat. You see it all over the place, right? Ling Gui Zhu Gan Tang, Fuling Gui Zhi, Baiju Gan Xiao Tang, to help bring fluid that's kind of overflowing from the kidneys to the heart. You kind of bringing that down. It's used for heart palpitations, insomnia, spleen stomach deficiency, like poor appetite, especially if it's because of dampness, fatigue, just that whole range of symptoms in that regard. You also see Fuling Pi, the peel, the outer peel of the Fuling, and that, as you would expect, is supposed to work on the edema that's kind of more skin layer. And there's formulas for that, like Wu Pi Yin, the 5 skin or 5 bark drink, right? It includes Wu Jia Pi and Chen Pi and five of those herbs. So see, Wu Jia Pi, Digu Pi, Fuling Pi, Da Fu Pi, and Shengjiang, right? Wu Pi and Wupiyin. And that also is for it is a diuretic for edema anywhere in the body, but specifically towards the outer part of the body. Even for that's a formula we're not doing today, but Wupian also you can use for edema in pregnant women. Okay. Okay. I think that Fuling you should be familiar with. Note that Fuling and Fushan, I think I mentioned this in class. Fushan is kind of the Fuling that includes the root that it grows around. But nowadays it's not really grown around roots anymore. So whether you use Fushan or Fuling, whether you use it or not, I'm not sure if the medicinal value is the effect is that much different. There's Chur Fuling, red Fuling, which also supposedly works more on the heart and shun. I typically just stick to Fuling. It works fairly well, but try them all and see what you think. Okay, so that I think should cover that. Yes, I don't think I have any other notes. Okay, I believe I covered all the material for February 21st, 2023, and hope this was helpful, and hope you have a good week. and I'll catch you when I return. Thank you.